In this lesson, you'll learn how to prepare and insert a file of events, as well as how to relate additional context to events when shared activities is enabled. In Salesforce, activities are the umbrella for tracking all customer interactions, like calls, meetings, to-do items, under one unified view, with tasks being to-do items, like follow-up, and events being scheduled happenings, like client meeting. An event can be related to a lead or contact by setting the who ID, and also relate to a non-human record like an account or opportunity via the what ID. When shared activities are enabled, users can relate up to 50 contacts or one lead to an event. During the initial insert, you can only set one value in the who ID field. So in order to associate multiple contacts to that event, you'll perform a second insert using the event IDs and the related contact IDs. More on that later in this lesson. As we prepare our event file for insert, there are certain fields that are different from tasks. Events have a start date and time and an end date and time. If they are all-day events, they'll rely on an activity date instead of the start date time. Another key difference between tasks and events is that tasks require a status value, whereas events don't have a status. If a task has a due date in the past, but it's still open, it's considered overdue. Events don't have that functionality. Events appear in the upcoming and overdue activities list when they're scheduled for a date in the future, or they appear in the activities timeline when their scheduled date is in the past. Even if the event never actually happened, it will still appear as a past event. Your event insert can accommodate the date time requirements in 3 ways. Number 1, enter a start date and time and an end date and time, and the duration will be calculated by Salesforce. 2, enter a start date and time and a duration, and the end date time will be calculated by Salesforce. 3, when is all day event is true, provide an activity date. Each event in your file must include one of these combinations to successfully insert. The next field to map to is subject. If the data you're migrating from doesn't have an applicable field with this data, you can create a subject by copying up to 255 characters from the event's description using Excel during your data prep. The event owner is either a user or a public calendar ID. Note that while tasks can be owned by users or queues, events cannot be owned by queues. The next key fields to prepare are who ID and what ID, which are labeled as name and related to in the user experience. Since the who ID and what ID are polymorphic fields, meaning they can reference more than one object, we don't have an easy way to use our legacy IDs to set the values. We can either use VLOOKUP in Excel to reference the applicable object's new Salesforce ID based on its legacy ID, or we can map the legacy who ID and legacy what ID into custom fields on the activity object so they're available for us to reference later when we want to update those fields using automation. An optional field you can set on the event is a checkbox named private. This tells Salesforce to show the time is blocked on the event owner's calendar, but hide the event details. Private events can't be associated with opportunities, accounts, cases, campaigns, contracts, leads, or contacts. Once your events are created, you can relate additional records to events using the event relations object. Each event relation record is either a related record or an invitee. We'll be tasked with inserting related contacts more frequently than invitees, so let's dig in here first, and then we'll come back to invitees. A related record interacts with the is who and is what fields on the event. Invitees do not. For example, you're tasked with inserting events, but some events have more than one attendee. You inserted the event file, and some had a value in the who and what ID fields, and some didn't. The source database included a file that had the event ID and related contact IDs. You're ready to prepare this for your load. Your first step is to insert a column called isParent and set it to true for all rows. Notice here that row 3 has an account ID in the relation ID column. Since Salesforce considers this a what, we need to insert another column named isWhat and set that to true. This will populate the event's what ID if it's currently blank. If you receive the error that says you can only add up to one what relation, it's because either the event already has value in the what ID field, or there's more than one what ID for one event in your file. So the first what is set into the what ID, and any subsequent whats will fail. Don't worry, you did nothing wrong. Remember that Salesforce's data model can be different from other databases you're migrating from. You can only work with what Salesforce can accommodate, and this is one of those situations where if you receive data from a database that allowed more than one what relation, you can only load the first of those and the rest are left behind. Going back to our sample file, the 3 contact relations marked as isParent equals true are inserted as event attendees. In the UI, you can see that the name field has the first person named plus 2 more. Edit the record to see how the contact names appear in the name field. Now that you understand loading event attendees, let's talk about invitees. Your file can tell Salesforce you're inserting invitees in a couple of ways. The first is when you insert a column named isInvitee and set it to true. The second is if you leave both isParent and isInvitee as blank. Salesforce considers these invitees and will assign the default invitee status to them. Invitees can be assigned a status of new, which is the default, declined, or accepted. Your inserted invitees appear in the Meeting Digest tab of the event record page. Those with the accepted status have a green check mark beside them, those with declined have a red X beside them, and those with the default new status have no visual indicator. FYI, non-recurring events can have up to 1,000 invitees, recurring events can have up to 100, and the number of invitees is not affected by the number of related attendees, and vice versa. Before we do our walkthrough of inserting events and event relations, let's discuss some event insert errors you might see. If you get this field integrity exception, you're getting your hand slapped for populating the what ID when you've set the who ID to a lead record. Blank out the what ID on these and reinsert. Since it's unlikely that your source data would have a who and a what ID for what Salesforce considers a lead, getting this error could be an indicator that you've messed up your VLOOKUP somewhere along the way, so go back and double check your work. If you get a bad value for a restricted Picklist field error, you need to go to the field, add the values from your file, and insert again. FYI. Custom Picklist fields can be changed from restricted to unrestricted, so you have the option to change it for a data load and then go back and restrict it again after the load is complete. Some native fields don't look restricted, but are and cannot be made unrestricted, so you will have to add the applicable Picklist values in order to proceed with setting them. When you receive the activity date and start date time must match, but you look in your file and they do match, like in this example, the error is occurring because the event is marked as an all-day event. To solve it, filter your sheet for all events that are marked as all day, and then blank out all of the data in the start date time, end date time, and duration fields. Make sure that you've populated the activity date field and mapped it for your data load. Let's jump into Excel and Data Loader and insert our event and our event attendees files. We've opened up our events workbook and we're on the sample events prepped tab. Let's take a look at some of our fields and make sure that everything is ready to go. First, I like to make sure that our created date, our start date time, and our end date and time are all correctly formatted. The Excel formatting tab of the workbook includes many of these commonly used formats. Let's also make sure that our activity date field is correctly formatted. Now let's go over to our is all day event field and filter for true. For all of our all day events, we need to make sure that we have specified an activity date and we have removed all data in the start date time, end date time, and duration fields. Let's clear that filter and navigate over to our who ID and our what ID. Let's sort by our who ID to make sure that any place we have specified a lead ID, we want to make sure that our what ID is blanked out. Now that we've confirmed that our data looks pretty good, we'll create a copy in CSV and then we'll load it. Pulling up Data Loader, we are going to insert into the event object, grab our prepped CSV file, and proceed with the load. Let's make sure that we double check our mapped fields before we proceed. And then we'll hit OK and hit Next. We've set our output folder and we're ready to click Finish. We have 42 successful inserts and 1 error, which is to be expected because we did keep this second row in here, which has our original API field names. Now we'll grab our success file and create a new tab in our workbook named Event Successes. Let's take a look at our work. We'll grab the ID of one of the inserted events and navigate into Salesforce. After the force.com/, we'll paste the ID of the event record that we're going to look at, and we can see that we have the name of a person, an account record, and the related to, and we'll confirm that the start date time and end date and time all make sense based on our spreadsheet. Now we're ready to insert our event relation records. In our events workbook, there's a tab called Event Relations. We've done the majority of our data prep, but we do need to go to our success file for the events we just loaded and make sure we grab the event IDs of the current record in Salesforce. We'll pull that event ID into our spreadsheet, create our CSV, and get ready to load. First, let's navigate to Salesforce and take a look at that event record that we loaded. You'll notice that in this particular event, there is no name or related to, so we'll be relying on our event relations file to create those associations. We can also click on the meeting digest and confirm that there are currently no attendees. Let's go ahead and load our event relations file. We'll click Insert, Show All Salesforce Objects, and start typing Event and choose Event Relation. We'll grab our prepped file, confirm our mapping, click Next, select our output folder, and proceed. We have 20 successful inserts and 0 errors. Let's take a look at our sheet before we go into Salesforce. What we expect to see in Salesforce is that the Related To field is now populated with an account. We also expect to see 4 contact attendees, and we expect to see 15 contact invitees. Let's navigate back over to Salesforce, and we'll click Refresh on our event record. Here we see we have 4 contact attendees like we expected, as well as a value in our Related To field. We'll click on the Meeting Digest tab, and now we can see all of our attendees. Attendees says 16 because we inserted 15 invitees, plus Salesforce counts the organizer. Let's make sure that we grab our event relations success IDs and put them into our event workbook. Now it's your turn. Open the event workbook and make your necessary preparations. Create your CS files to insert using Data Loader, and make sure you follow your best practices of adding your success IDs back to your workbook. Up next, we'll cover recurring tasks and events.